I don't know how to start. Paramahansa Yogananda said that we cannot think of God in the absolute aspect beyond manifestation until we have had the experience of the soul, which is beyond manifestation. In any autobiography of a yogi, he said, because the absolute is nirguna, which means without qualities, and asintya are inconceivable. The human mind cannot grasp it. Human thought and yearning have ever personalized it as the universal mother. The combination of personal theism and the philosophy of the absolute is an ancient achievement of Hindu thought, expounded in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. And so now when we are talking about Divine Mother, this is a very complex subject. Master used to say, in India, we like to think of God as the mother. And I think it was only after I had been in India that I really understood what he meant. And I can only say it in the words of several prominent men in India and different places. India also is going through turmoil, just like all the other countries. There's political difficulties, economic difficulties, and so on. And they said essentially all the same thing. The only thing that we can be proud of today in India is our women. And even though the women in India do not have as much freedom as here in the West, are more in the background, the mother ideal is supreme. And I do not mean this in the narrow sense of a person that has had children, but the motherly qualities is supreme. And to a Hindu, the mother is everything. And that goes, it's not just with grown women, it goes all the way down to little girls. I have seen 4 or 5, 6-year-old little girls carrying around a little baby sister or baby brother, or at the river or at the pond, bathing a little baby sister or baby brother. Most of the people do not have enough money to buy toys for their children in India. They don't need any toys. They have the mother. Or a little mother, a little sister who's taking care of her. I think in all the time that I was in India, everywhere, I have never heard a baby cry. I remember one time I was in a place when I saw every day a young woman who was a sweeper, and that's one of the lowest rungs of the social ladder. And she had a little baby tied to her back, and all day long sweeping away, and all along talking to her little baby. And that baby, I never heard anything coming from that baby except gurgling sounds of happy contentment. And so it is quite natural that people see, particularly in Bengal, but throughout India, God as the Divine Mother. And I used to go sometimes when I had opportunity, when I was in Dakshineswar, to the Kali temple that you have read about. The Master had the experience of that stone image becoming alive, turning into the actual form of Divine Mother. And so we used to go in the morning early, before the temple opened. Temple opened at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we used to sit in meditation at the portico, exactly there where the Master sat at that time when You have read the story how he went with his sister Roma and her husband, and how that material man was changed into a devotee. And then when people were lining up with baskets of flowers and garlands and incense and sweets and so on in order to go to the mother. And then at 6 o'clock, the temple opens, and then you'll hear, Ma, Ma, calling the mothers, grown men. And I thought, it's most touching. They're just like little children, going to their mother, bringing their offerings of devotion, and some of them walking all around the temple and Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Then afterwards, contentedly, they go home. They have visited their mother. And I thought, isn't that wonderful? They are just like little children. They really think that Divine Mother is in that stone image. And they're right. They're right. Divine Mother is everywhere. And that in those places they have been spiritualized by the great saints. It's very interesting. In India, the men are not afraid to show their affection. It's not like here, where we are told if you are showing affection or if you cry or you express your feelings, then you are a sissy and you're not a man and all that sort of thing. It doesn't happen in India. They're not suppressed there. It was very interesting. One time when we were stationed in Dakshineswar, Brahmachari Edwin, who came with us to India, he had to go on some errands to Calcutta, just a few miles away. And on the way home, he took a rickshaw, and they passed a building, and he heard group chanting in that building with drums and cymbals. And he asked the driver, what ashram is that? And the man said, that's not an ashram. Those are army barracks. Can you imagine? Army barracks and chanting to God. And I tell you, those Indian soldiers, they are not sissies. I have watched them a couple places in their training. This is one of the toughest, one of the most disciplined armies in the world. They are fearless. They believe in reincarnation. They're not afraid of death. Tough, fearless, chanting to God. Now, when we talk about Divine Mother, this is, to a Western person, Western mind, in a certain degree, this is very difficult to understand. The Hindu has no problems at all. Because it is, what is Divine Mother? Divine Mother is the universal Shakti, the universal power. It is that aspect of God which is dynamic. The one aspect is beyond creation. Quiet, no manifestation. And all that is manifestation, whole cosmos, that's the Mother. Now, when you look at nature, you see all kinds of things. You see the good, the benign aspects, and then you see the terrible aspect, isn't it? Cataclysms and death and destruction. Now, the Hindu sees there too the Divine Mother. And he sees it from a higher standpoint, from a greater perspective. And that all includes vast, infinite harmony. And so I want to give you a quote from what a Hindu saint said. She is the power, or Shakti, in the universe. She is the cosmic warrior, which goes to war against our imperfections, our ego, our limitations, our lack of faith, with painful blows, not to destroy us, but to heal us, to awaken us. What are tests, trials, suffering? It is the Mother which destroys all barriers which keep us from her, freeing us with her mighty blows to speed up our evolution, to bring us to total surrender, a change, an awakening which otherwise would take countless incarnations of wandering in a darkness of delusion. Do you understand? There's an infinite harmony behind the difficulties that we are facing. Now that is the terrible aspect of Divine Mother. And Mother Kali usually is represented as having 4 arms, and the 3 arms, this is one interpretation, 3 arms represent the 3 gunas, the universal forces: creation, preservation, and destruction. And the 4th arm, that's really the mother which we are appealing to. That's the sweet aspect, and that means, fear not, my child. I am your mother. Come to me. I give you my unconditional love. I give you salvation. And so it is usually when we talk about Divine Mother, we are thinking about that aspect. Infinite compassion, infinite understanding, infinite mercy, forgiveness, the grace of God. That's the Mother. And so I want to spend the rest of the evening in giving you different kinds of aspects of the infinite variety. You know, I could speak about this all night. Infinite variety of aspects of Divine Mother. One of them you probably have heard is Divine Mother has also manifested in the West. They call it Virgin Mary, and they say it is Mother of God, but that's really the Divine Mother. To some devotees, she has said, I am the Mother. I am your mother, I am the mother of all. Saint Therese of Lisieux, in her autobiography, wrote Divine Mother, and they later on crossed it out and said she was sick. She couldn't have meant that. They wrote in Mother of God. Not true. She meant Divine Mother. And so in France, in La Salette one time, she appeared to 2 little children who were tending their flocks, crying, 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 because her human children had gone astray. And she said, tell them, they have gone away from God and from the ways of God. And because of this, a great famine will come into the world. And tell them, please tell them, to go back to the ways of God. And if they do, the famine will be avoided, and they won't suffer. And still crying, crying, she disappeared. And those children went to the village, and that news spread, that message spread to all the villages, the whole region there. And they did change. And the famine did not come. And they did not suffer. There's another one. The first trip, at the very end, we left India from Delhi, and nearby is Vrindavan. And so the last day, some devotees, Hindu devotees, were gracious enough. They took us to Vrindavan and showed us around. And we saw the places where Krishna had played his Leela in Vrindavan with his playmates and the gopis. And we saw all kinds of temples dedicated to Krishna. And about noon, we went to a temple of Divine Mother, and the temple was closed. So the Hindu devotees went to call a priest and said, please open the temple so that our guests can see Divine Mother. The priest said, impossible. And they said, but there are sannyasis, they have come from America, and tomorrow they are going back to America. This is the only chance to see the Divine Mother, please. That priest was adamant. He said, impossible. Cannot disturb Divine Mother. She is having lunch. So We didn't see Divine Mother that day because she was having lunch. I thought it was very cute because that shows, I thought, Mother is playing hide and seek with her devotees, and sometimes she is, you have the feeling she has withdrawn, she's gone. And when that happened, you just think, she is omnipresent. She's always with you. She's never gone. It's just, she hides sometimes, but she's always really there. And when you feel sometimes God has forsaken you, you just think, she's having lunch. There's another one. There's a story I read in India. It's really a story of Krishna. The gopis one time were in their usual place there in that meadow, were dancing. And the gopis, by the way, that was not just all peaches and cream. Some of them were severely persecuted by their relatives because of their great devotion to Krishna. And Krishna, he was always playing pranks on everybody. So this afternoon they were dancing there on that meadow, and all of a sudden they saw a new gopi in their midst. And one of them cried out in surprise, "This is my sister-in-law who has been persecuting me." Another one cried, "Oh, it is my cousin who has been so mean to me." And so on. Each one saw somebody else, a personal enemy in that new gopi. And then there was a peal of laughter. It was Radha, the chief gopi. And she said, "My sisters, haven't you learned yet to see through his tricks? It is Krishna who has taken on the forms, the disguise of all those various people." And then that new gopi changed into the form of Krishna and said, "Blessed is Radha, who alone saw me hiding behind the various disguises." What is the meaning? It is one. The one God has taken on the form or the forms of all. Through the power of delusion, we think, I am different from you and you are different from you and so on. That's delusion. There's one consciousness. And when you learn to see that, it changes your whole attitude towards the whole show. Isn't it? It was Krishna who was the personal enemy of all those. And when the moment you see it is the one, it is God, it takes the edge out of it. Then you see it's all a play. The moment you think it is one person that is mean to you, that is persecuting you or whatever, then you're emotionally involved. Or it goes even with the person that is very kind to you. You think that is a person and you're emotionally involved there. And when you think it is the one, then you're dealing with God and you become free from the play. Do you understand that? And that is why you find this everywhere. Mother Teresa of Calcutta, she told her nuns, when you're taking care of the dying, when you're taking care of the poorest of the poor, if you think of them as the dying or the poorest of the poor, you are not fulfilling your mission. You have to see God in those people, in those forms. God, she said, in his distressing forms. And so it is, the devotee of Krishna sees Krishna everywhere. The devotee of the mother sees mother everywhere. Devotee of Christ is Christ in all. That is why it says in that chant, 1,000 Vedas to declare Divine Mothers everywhere. Blind eyes see them all hiding everywhere. Now, Master said, of course you have to use discrimination. Suppose you see a tiger and you think there's God, and you run and you embrace that tiger. That tiger God probably is going to chew you up. But it still helps. It still helps if you think about it. There's a story of India that was in the last century, 1857. There was a large Indian uprising against the British in India. And one time during that uprising, the people in a village heard that a group of soldiers, British soldiers, were coming. And in panic, they ran away. And as they were running, they saw a sadhu coming towards them and walking towards the village. And they said to him, the British soldiers are coming. If you are going there, they are going to kill you. Come with us. And he ignored them. He walked on, and sure enough, saw those British soldiers, and one of them rammed his bayonet through him. And he was mortally wounded, lying on the ground. And with his last breath, he looked up at that soldier and said, "You too are he." Most beautiful story. If you remember it, even the greatest enemy, if you see God, you're dealing with God, not with the external show. You're dealing with God, and you're free. Blind eyes see them all, hiding everywhere. Now, there is another aspect. Who do you think invented humor? Divine Mother. And she has a very funny sense of humor. And I tell you this, and you might remember this, when Divine Mother wants to play with you, you've got to play along. If you resist, you're in trouble. I remember in the 60s, early 60s, when I used to do campaigning, traveling around in various cities and having lectures. And first, usually I had some radio or TV appearances and talk shows and so on in order to, as advertisement, to introduce the public lectures. So one time here in Los Angeles, I had to go on a TV program. It was a panel discussion. There were about a dozen representatives from different churches and metaphysical groups. So anyway, I went there. One of the monks drove me. And first thing is you go to the makeup man in order to, just to take the shine off, under those hot lights. Now, here we don't have it. So that's why I'm glowing like a. So they put just a little powder on to take the shine off. And that I saw that makeup man was utterly bored, utterly indifferent. It's just a fast, routine job, dusting everybody. And I was the last one. I sat in a chair, and he looked at me kind of sarcastically, my collar and my scarf and the lotus pin, and he said, "And whom do you represent?" I said, "Self-Realization Fellowship." He said, that name sounds familiar. What do you teach? I said, "Yoga." He said, "Yoga? Yogananda?" It's just, she became alive. I said, "Yes." I mean, teaching, that's his organization. And he said, "Man, I just read this book, his autobiography." And he was so excited, he didn't know what to do. And then he said, You know what? I'm going to give you a makeup job. He said, you won't believe it. And at that moment, I knew I was not dealing with that man. I was dealing with Divine Mother direct. And I didn't like it at all. And he said, you're gonna be just beautiful. Not like the other guys. He said. And I thought, dear God, please let me die. So he started painting my face, everything. Painting the eyebrows, and you wouldn't believe. And then I thought he was through. Then he started on top of the head. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm painting in some hair that are missing. I said, you can't do that. I said, there are all kinds of members who know me. They're going to watch the show. And if I suddenly come with hair, what? He said, don't worry. They'll love it. And then again, I thought, please let me die. And the other monk, he was sitting there in the same room, and he enjoyed it. He had the time of his life. So then I said, it looks terrible. It doesn't look, He said, trust me. He said, trust me. It doesn't look right here, but on the screen, it's going to be perfect. You're going to be beautiful. So we went, the show. It was a long show. It's a crazy show. Everyone tried to convince everybody else that his definition of God was the right one. And it was so ridiculous. Then finally they started to argue. They said, God is a person, and if God is a person, now they started to argue, is he black or is he white? It's so ridiculous. And I said, look, it doesn't matter. Everybody has a different concept of God. It doesn't matter. The important thing is that we have a true communion with God, not as an outer ritual, but as an inner experience through meditation. They didn't even know what I was talking about. So anyway, show went on. I didn't say very much. I just sat there. Didn't say much because there was no point. It lasted 2 hours, and then afterwards, we were still animated, and we drove off, the monk and I, and going home, and it was late, and we were hungry, and we thought, well, going to have a bite to eat. And usually we don't do that because, whenever I appeared in public with my collar and scarf, and people look they stare at you. And so I thought, never mind. We went into Vande camps, and the place was full of people. We sat down, still talking about the show, and ordered our food, and then I heard giggling around. I didn't pay any attention. We still talked about the show, and all of a sudden it hit us both at the same time. I still had the makeup on. I'd all forgotten about it. You know, I could have stopped it. I could have said, look, folks, I was on TV and I'm going home as quickly as I can to wash that stuff off, but I didn't. I thought, and the other monkey was a very conservative person. And, you know, he said, this is so opposite of what we are usually doing, you know. Sitting there in my minister's outfit and that crazy makeup with hair, false hair painted. So I thought, let him laugh. We laughed, you know, you have to play along. I say this again. If Divine Mother decides to play with you, don't resist. Because if you do resist, she is going to play so hard until you have full surrender. So start right in the first time. So there is another, let me see what I have on my notes. All right, the unconditional love. You remember that story when Master was a boy? And when he went to see Master Mahasha, the devotee of Divine Mother, and he asked him to intercede for him, and he did, and he went into his little attic room to meditate. And he told us, he said, how, a little more in detail, how he meditated, and all of a sudden that night lit up, and there was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. And he asked, are you the Divine Mother? And she said, yes, I am. And he cried, Mother, do you love me? And then she said, always have I loved thee. Ever shall I love thee. Now again, this is one of those words that you have to take personally. Don't just read it. Don't just read it as happening to somebody else. You have to make those things your own. And now think, always have I loved thee. Always. What does that mean? Master and all the great ones, Krishna, Jesus, Babaji, they were not always perfect. They too went through the whole evolution. They too went through the school of life. They too made the same blunders, same mistakes as we have made and are still making. That's why they have such great understanding and such compassion. But Divine Mother said, always have I loved thee. That means all the way through it is unconditional love. And this is so difficult for us to understand because we are used to have human standards, isn't it? Human standards of love means you have to live up to certain conditions. And if you fulfill those conditions, then I love you. And if you do not, I do not love you. God is not that way. God's love is unconditional. That's the mother aspect. No matter what we do, no matter what wrongs we have done, that love is unconditional. That's what this story says. So remember this whenever you read that passage. When she said, always have I loved thee. That's the unconditional love. That's always there. Now, some people I know, for some reason, are not able to relate to the mother aspect because maybe they couldn't relate, they had some difficulty in relating with their own mother. And to me, personally, when I came to Master, Master was everything. He had all those divine qualities of God. And I was perfectly satisfied with that. But Master always talked about Divine Mother, and sometimes I thought, if he is talking about Divine Mother, maybe that is also my aspect of God. And so I always went back and forth, Divine Mother, Master, Divine Mother, Master, and I never could go deep in my devotion. And then one day he said to me, chant to Divine Mother. I thought, okay, now he tells me, Divine Mother. Next time I saw Master, Divine Mother disappeared and Master was there. Then I thought, this is enough. I sat down and I thought it over, and then it came to me. Who is Master? What is the Divine Mother? Unconditional love, forgiveness, grace, kindness, infinite understanding, all those aspects. And this is exactly the aspects that Master manifested. Exactly. And then I thought, Divine Mother and the Guru, same thing. Exactly the same thing. Divine Mother is working through the Guru. Guru is the Divine Mother. And then later on I read in Master's writings, in one of his prayers, when he says, Infinite Mother, it is thou who didst come in the forms of all thy saints. And from then on, no more conflict. Divine Mother, my Guru, one. Same thing. And we saw with Master, same thing. There's a saint in India who said, Mother is a mother because she knows how to make provisions for her children. Meaning she knows the needs of each child, and she gives each child what it needs. Not necessarily what the child wants, but what the child needs. And so I saw in the training that Master gave us, he treated each one differently, according to not our wants, according to our needs, according to our understanding, and our capacity to adjust, to learn, and to change. And so I saw, for instance, to give you just a couple instances. One time, the Master was in his car, and some of the monks were standing around him, and suddenly he said to one of the monks, "What are you thinking?" And that monk was embarrassed and immediately apologized. And Master very kindly said, "See, I know." And he told me afterwards, he said, "You really just had the wrong thought." Master picked it up just like that. Another time was the same situation. Master was there, a few monks around, and all of a sudden he looks at one of the monks and said, "What are you thinking?" And that monk resisted, immediately defended himself. He said, "Sir, I didn't think anything wrong." Now, Master's reaction was quite different. He said, "Don't try to deceive me. I know I am omniscient." And afterwards that monk said to me, "You know, when he said that, he let me feel a little bit of his power. I was scared to death." So it was each one depending on how a person was reacting to his discipline, or what he needed as discipline. Master gave it. And he always knew, whether we were with him or far away, he always knew. There was a time regularly when I saw him every day, and usually in the evening, one time, and every time when I came to him, he just hit me on the head like that, and he said, "Oh, Henry." And I knew he had seen the whole thing, and he knew what my attitude was, and I thought, thank God, forgiven again. One time we had one monk who was responsible for getting the recording equipment. So he had his room, his rather large room in a cottage up in Mount Washington near the entrance. And there in that room he kept his recording equipment. And that room was always a total mess. And I had my room just next to him, so I knew. Now, one Sunday afternoon, I walked by and his door was open and I saw he had a gigantic project, straightening up his room and cleaning and everything. I said, "You are working on your room?" He said, "Yeah, I'm surprised myself." He said, "I don't know why I'm doing it, but I'm doing it." So it took him hours and really did a wonderful job cleaning and straightening out and everything. And then he took a shower and he dressed. And the moment the phone rang, he took the phone, was Master. Master asked, "Do you have the recording equipment in your room?" "Yes, sir." "I want to do some recording. I'm coming over. I want to do it in your room. Are you ready?" And that monk said, "Yes, sir." And he hung up. He was completely stunned. He said, "Boy, am I lucky. Think of it if he had come before I cleaned my room." And I said to him, "Don't you think it might be possible that he gave you that idea to clean that room? To save you embarrassment?" He said, "Well, I'll be darned. That's maybe so." So you see, that's exactly like Divine Mother, treating each one according to needs. It's just absolutely perfect. I'll tell you my avocado story. I haven't told it in a long time. Those of you who have heard it, well, you just bear with me. It was when Master was out in the desert, and I was there too for several months, and sometimes there were other monks. We had construction projects, and sometimes I was alone. And one time, as I was working, I heard Master's voice in the house, thundering voice, scolding one of the devotees inside. And what I have heard just for a trifle, and I've never heard him like that. And I thought, my God, I congratulated myself that I was outside. I thought, when a master is angry, you better are not around. And then I heard him walking, still thundering voice, walking to the house, coming to the door, coming out, slamming the door, and I was shaking in my boots. I thought, now I get it. Master turned toward me. I couldn't believe it. Sweetest smile. Not a trace of anger. And he said to me, "You are doing wonderful work." And he praised me, and I thought, what's this? I was still shaking in my boots. And then he walked off and he went for a walk. And then my mind got warped, completely distorted. I thought, seeing him there, I never doubted that he was a master. I had too much proof of that. But I thought, he is so angry in there, and then all of a sudden that anger is completely vanished, and he is as sweet as could be. I thought, maybe he is just playing with us. Maybe he doesn't love us. I thought, if he doesn't love me, I'm totally lost. I was very disturbed. And even though usually I saw him every day, several times, and he came, talked to me and so on, I didn't see him anymore that day. And I was very disturbed. The next day, when he came out, sometimes when he came out, he brought me a fruit or a little sweets or something. And that is in India, that is a custom. And the saint gives something that is the token of his blessing. And so this day, he gave me a half of an avocado. Now, the way I was brought up in a very strict home. My father was a businessman. At the same time, he was a high-ranking officer in the Swiss Army. Discipline. When it came to eating, there was no such thing as likes or dislikes. We ate what was on the table, period. So I was not spoiled at all. But I never tasted avocados until I came to this country, and for some reason, I couldn't stand avocado. And I thought, now, there, he is omniscient. He knows exactly that I cannot eat these things. And he gives me an avocado. That proves he doesn't love me. And I tell you, I was so disturbed that whole day and that whole night I couldn't sleep. I walked around in the desert and I thought, he doesn't love me. I'm totally lost. And then I made up my mind, I'm going to show him. I'm going to tell him I'm angry. It's going to be a showdown. I want to know and if he loves me or not. This is a matter of life and death to me. So in the morning, I went to Master's house, ready for the showdown. I was working, we had built a little apartment next to the garage, and I was putting up the roof. It was a flat roof. So I was hammering, waiting for him to come. About 10 o'clock, I didn't see him, but I heard the door going. I thought, no. And I hammered real furiously. So at the door, he called me. No answer. Hammering. I want to show him that I'm mad. So he came a little closer. He called me again. No answer. Hammering. I didn't hit the nails anymore then. I was too excited. And then I heard him coming real close, just, below where I was working. And he called my name again. This time, insistent. And I looked down and I said, yes, sir. He said, come down. And that moment, my mind straightened out again. All of a sudden, I saw it clear. I knew what Master did. He was a perfectionist. And those devotees with whom he was working in house, they were long time, several years or many years had been under his training. And he, on the slightest little thing, he wouldn't pass. He was a perfectionist. He was disciplining. But with me, he wouldn't bother with those things. He was still working on basics with me. I thought, of course, his discipline is nothing but an expression of love. And so I went down the stairs, was on the other side, and I walked around, and I stood in front of Master. I had a big lump in my throat for having doubted him. I looked at him, and he had both hands behind his back. And he looked at me, and then he brought one hand forward and gave me half of an avocado. And I took it. I thought at that point, anything he gives me, I don't care. If it kills me, I would take it. And then he smiled, and he brought the other hand forward, And there in a napkin was a handful of dates and pistachio nuts. And he said, eat it together. And then he will like it. And my lump got bigger and bigger. He said, sit down, eat. And he walked away. So I sat down and I ate. And when I was finished, he came back. He said, come, let's go for a walk. And he took me by the hand. We walked. Silence. And after a few minutes, he stood still and he gave me a talk on the Guru's love for the disciple. And I tell you, it was such beautiful words, I wish I could repeat it, I can't. But he talked about the Guru, his unconditional love. He said, the only reason why I came is to bring you all back to God. He said, I would give my life. I am giving my life for you all. He said, never doubt the love of your Guru. And as he said those things, that he didn't just say words. There was a constant wave after wave after wave of love pouring into me. So much I couldn't take it. It was too much. I broke down, I cried like a baby. That's the Divine Mother, expressing so the infinite love, infinite compassion of the Guru. Now, one of the aspects of Divine Mother is the grace of God. And a Hindu saint said, if you are in the dark somewhere and there is a lamp, and that lamp is shedding light, he said that this is how grace flows. Whoever goes near that lamp receives the light. And he said that light is flowing unconditionally. He said that lamp does not discriminate. It doesn't say, I am giving you light because you are good, and I am not giving you light because you are a sinner. It would be absurd, it would be ridiculous. No, that light is flowing regardless of who is coming. And this is how the grace of God works. Now I've told you, God is omnipresent, you know that. But if we are indifferent to God, then we are not receptive to His grace. Do you understand? That is why Master said, God is the nearest of the near to those that seek Him, the farthest of the far to those that seek Him not. And so what we are doing, the whole process of our devotion, of our meditation, the techniques, is simply to become receptive to the grace of God, grace of Divine Mother, flowing through the Guru. The saint said in India, grace is absolute. It works unconditionally. Otherwise it could not be grace. Coming as it does from an all-powerful, all-loving being, if it works only under certain conditions, then that would mean that those conditions are greater, more potent than grace. And that is not so. Grace must work under all conditions. Then only can it be grace. You know, when the Master said, for instance, oh, I will come again and again. With bleeding feet I will come. If need be 1,000,000,000 times. As long as I know one stray brother is left behind. infinite compassion. Now these again are words which you are reading, and don't just read them and pass by. These words you have to absorb more and more. You have to think about them deep, ever deeper, and then you will see. You are overwhelmed by the infinite love of the Guru. And practice the techniques. That too is an aspect of God's grace. We take those techniques for granted because we receive them so easily. Don't take for granted. In the dark ages, in the materialistic ages, those sacred teachings, those great techniques were forgotten and known only by very, very few. Don't take for granted. Practice them. It's an immense, immense gift. Without techniques, it's very difficult because that life force is in the body, that life force is in the senses, and you have body identification, body consciousness, and identification with the outer realm. And the techniques, you have to work on them, you have to gradually master them, and gradually you'll see. In just a few kriyas, you're inside, in the presence of God. One time one of the ministers asked Master, what does Kriya Yoga do? And he told me afterwards, he said, I knew from the autobiography of a yogi and from the lessons, I knew the scientific aspect of Kriya Yoga. He said, I knew exactly that Kriya is the most direct technique to master and to interiorize the technique, the life force, and that way interiorize the consciousness. I knew that Kriya Yoga burns up karma. This is a very subtle process which you're not aware of. You think sometimes you're not getting any results. Those results are very subtle. The others do it too, Hong Sau and Om. But more powerfully it is done by Kriya. And the other aspect, speeding up of the spiritual evolution, the vibratory change. That too, he said, I knew. These are the three tremendous aspects, tremendous changes that are brought about by practice of the techniques. But I somehow felt, he said, besides that, there must be something more. And I wanted to know. And so I asked Master, what does Kriya do? And you know what Master said? It puts you in attunement with Guru. So don't just practice for the science aspect of the techniques. There's another aspect to it. Practice the techniques as a means to make your attunement with the Guru. And that means you are becoming receptive to the grace of God, flowing through the Guru. And make it simple. Make your relationship with God, make your relationship with the Guru simple. One time Master was talking with a group of us and he was praising the deep devotion of a very simple disciple. And among our group was a very sophisticated intellectual, and he was utterly surprised that Master would go to such great lengths to praise that devotion of that simple person. And he said, but sir, it's a very simple kind of devotion, isn't it? Master smiled and he said, that is what God likes. A saint in India said, you have to go to God as He made you, not as you have made yourself. You may have made yourself into a very prominent, successful businessman or scientist or artist or whatever. That's perfectly fine. Each one has to play his particular role, but play it for God, not for self. That is the great change. That is the difference between a materialistic person and a devotee. Materialistic person is ego-centered. He does it for himself. The devotee is God-centered, and he does it for God. That's the difference. It's not a difference in external role playing. When you look at the various saints, various religions, various times, you find them in any possible category of social position or occupation. It was not that which made them saints. It was their inner attitude, their inner relationship with God, how they played the role, not what they played, how they played the role to please God. And through meditation and devotion. And so, how did God make us? He made us as little, naked, guileless little children. Isn't it? And when Divine Mother sees that we are self-sufficient, prominent, big people, she says, all right, he is grown up, he can take care of himself. And I am busy with the little children. Have that attitude. Just like a little child. One more story, last one. Now you know all that story because I have to tell it every time. And usually I always tell it when I give Kriya initiation. And that was my very first interview with Master. I saw him after a Sunday service in Hollywood. And he asked me questions. And all kinds of questions. And with every question I knew, he had seen the whole picture of my life. He didn't need to ask anything. He formulated the questions in such a way that I knew, he knew. And all the mistakes I have made. And usually, we are not showing ourselves to everybody completely. There's usually a shell around us. But Master, with every question, one of those layers came off. And when he was through, there was nothing left. Except a poor, naked little child. And he did it in such a wonderful way, such a sweet way. Not saying, look, I am omniscient and I know all about you. No. He did it with the attitude, I had the feeling, it's like a mother. And there was that naked little child. And he gave me to understand, from now on, I'm taking care of you. And when I went away from Master, I put all those things back on. Never, never with Master. Never. To Master, I'm always a naked little child. And that's how you have to be. No reservation. Completely open. Naked little child. And if you do, you can be assured that that's the mother. The instinct of the mother is to take care of a little child, isn't it? And if you go to God, if you go to Guru with that attitude, you can be assured the mother, through the Guru, will take care of you. take these thoughts, take that relationship with you, dwell on them, and remember them. Wherever you are. Mother is there, Guru is there, taking care of you. Let us close with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, and Bhagavan Sri Krishna, Mahavatar Babaji, Lahiri Mahashai, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, our Guru, Paramahansa Yogananda Ji, saints of all religions, I bow to you all. Beloved God, Thou art my mother, Thou art my friend, Thou art my beloved, Thou art my Guru, Thou art my God. Bless me with ever deeper devotion. Help me to remember always, no matter where I go, Thou and I are never apart. Thou and I are never apart. Om. Peace. Amen. God bless you all.